There we go. Ready to go live.
It's going live now.
Okay,
We'll
now
start at 6:30. We'll have the recording going. Like I said, worst comes to worst, we'll just have to upload this and post
we're
it.
ready. We're ready. We're going live now, Bob.
We are going
Yeah.
Going live, Bob.
Excellent. All right. I see the stream is live.
Right here.
Okay. I think we're ready, and I see the judges rejoined us. Good evening, Your Honor.
Hi, good evening, everyone. How are you?
Good to see you. Your Honor, I'm Ike Carruthers, and I'm a member of the West Side Coalition PAC.
Right here.
Very pleased to be joining my colleagues. We're all co-chairs, Attorney Bob Delhotra and also Attorney Natalie House. They know them, I don't know. However, we're pleased that you joined us.
Okay.
As you may know or not know, the West Side Coalition PAC is a group of folk comprised of mainly people off the west side of Chicago.
Okay.
A group that makes endorsements of various candidates, not only judicial, but also other races as well. We've had these judicial forums, I don't know, maybe 3-4 years now. Bob and I have been quarterbacking these things for a while. And in fact, you may have come to one of our previous ones, I believe, as I recall. So good to see you again. And I saw you yesterday, so it's good to see you again. So we're going to have a number of questions. We may alternate some of the questions. I may have a few. Then I'll go to either Natalie or Bob, and then we'll just kind of get right into questions. And this is the first time we've actually done it electronically. Like so many folks used to doing stuff electronically now, and I know you are too, as a judge. A lot of you folks are still doing stuff electronically. So that's pretty much it. Our leadership in terms of the coalition, Arnold Bearden is the president of the coalition, and we have many other folks, some elected officials who are also members of the coalition. So I'd like to start out with the first question, if you don't mind. And that question basically, could you please just tell us about yourself by telling us what schools you attended, including college and law school, and why you are running for judge, even though I know that you are a sitting judge. But you're running still in order to retain your seat. What's to run? Don't you see?
Absolutely. Well, thank you again, everyone, and good evening, and thank you for this opportunity. I am Judge Araceli de la Cruz, and it's my pleasure to be here with you. I'm a proud product of the Chicago Public Schools, having attended Walt Disney Magnet School on Marine Drive, and most folks don't talk about their grammar school experience, but I particularly enjoyed mine. Walt Disney Magnet School was a model for magnet schools back in the, I'm going to date myself here, late 70s and early 80s. And what that meant is that it brought children from all across the city and different socioeconomic backgrounds together in this magnet program. So as a young child, I've grown up with and had friends from all different communities across the city, and that's really a real important part of my fabric. I then attended Lane Technical High School, which is one of the biggest schools in Chicago, had a great experience there as well. I then attended the University of Illinois at Chicago for undergraduate studies, where I majored in English with concentration in writing, and then a minor in political science. And upon graduation, I then went on to the then called John Marshall Law School, which is now UIC Law. So I'm very local in terms of my education. I'm very committed to this community of Chicago and the Chicagoland area, and it's where I call home. And why I'm running for judge, I was appointed on January 6th by the Illinois Supreme Court. I do have to run to keep my seat. I was appointed to the O'Brien vacancy, so we'll be running in the June primary. This has been a dream, a hope, and a quest of mine my entire legal career. Even before I began practicing as an attorney, I was a victim witness advocate for the state's attorney's office. That meant that I would help guide witnesses and victims through the court system. And it was in that experience that I saw the impact that judges have on everyday lives, on how they treat people, on the decisions that they make. And at that point, I knew I was in law school at the time, and I knew that that was a role that I eventually could see myself in, and a capacity in which I wanted to serve. And now I get to wake up every day and serve in that capacity, and I'm very privileged and honored to do so. And so I'm running to keep that seat.
Great, great. So, Your Honor, could you tell us about your legal experience?
Sure. I have a very diverse legal background. I started off as an assistant state's attorney, and I did criminal prosecution, and I was assigned to a number of different areas. I started off in traffic, which is actually where I'm presiding now. I was in the child protection division for a while. I was also in narcotics, where I handled the vertical prosecution of narcotics cases. I was in sex crimes. I was in felony review, and I did homicide and sexual assault cases. I was a state's attorney for over 8.5 years. I tried hundreds of cases, misdemeanor and felony, bench trials and jury, and had a lot of everyday active litigation experience. I then went on to the Chicago Transit Authority, where I served in a couple different capacities, but the role that I served in the longest was the Chief Safety and Security Officer role, where I ensured the safety and security of 1.7 million transit riders on a daily basis. So on the security side of the house, I coordinated with the Chicago Police Department on anti-terrorism efforts. And on the safety side of the house, I ensured compliance with all the federal and state regulations that are implemented to ensure that our transit workers and riders have a safe experience every day. I then went to work for the Illinois Department of Financial and Professional Regulations. I was the chief of general prosecutions. I was in a licensed enforcement capacity. I was the chief overseeing other prosecutorial attorneys, and we ensured license enforcement in a number of different professions, kind of across the spectrum, from cosmetologists to funeral homes to roofers. And then I was the general counsel, chief administrative officer at Settle Schools. It is a network of 15 schools. It's a charter school. However, the teachers are unionized by the Chicago Teachers Union. 15 schools, almost 7,000 students. And in that capacity, I kind of called upon all my experiences because as in-house counsel, there's just so many different types of areas of law that you work on and have interaction with on a daily basis. So I oversaw outside counsel in any litigation matters that we may have found ourselves in. I tended to corporate governance, Freedom of Information Act type requests, education law issues since we were schools, student privacy issues, student discipline issues. Labor issues were significant as we had a collective bargaining agreement with the Chicago Teachers Union. I negotiated 4 memorandums of understanding during the ongoing pandemic alone, just to ensure that students and teachers had a safe working and learning environment. And then on January 6th of this year, I came onto the bench.
Okay, that's quite a bit.
That was long.
Just a clarifying question, then we move on. So, unless I missed it, it sounds like your whole career pretty much been in government?
Yes, I've been a public servant my entire career. I've not
Right.
practiced in the private sector.
Okay, you're not practicing private sector. Okay. All right, I'll turn it over to one of my colleagues who will jump in. Thank you so much, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Cook.
I'll step in now. Good evening, Judge Dela Cruz. Can you tell us a little bit about your litigation experience? Can you tell us, can you quantify for us how many trials you've done, where you've gotten your litigation experience, either state or federal court?
So really the majority of my litigation experience was during my 8.5 years as a state's attorney. In the traffic division, I was litigating cases on a daily basis. Those were misdemeanor traffic offenses, but I was in a courtroom every single day. I did a couple jury trials while I was there as well. I went into abuse and neglect, where the nature of the cases were civil. So instead of in the criminal realm, I was handling civil cases and did a number of hearings, permanency hearings in that capacity. And then I was in narcotics, where again, I tried hundreds of cases. I was also in special prosecutions narcotics, which meant that I was in a specialized unit that handled the vertical prosecution of cases. So cases assigned to me, I would handle from the very inception, from bond court, all the way to whether it was a plea or a bench trial or a jury trial. So I was responsible for those cases there. I also conducted hundreds of preliminary hearings in the branch courts and felony preliminary hearings division, and I indicted hundreds of cases in branch 66. So that was really the bulk of my active litigation experience. At CTA, I did not litigate. I called upon all of those skills, obviously, and all the work that I did. When I was at the state, I was then again in a prosecutorial capacity, except at that time in an administrative setting. And so there were administrative cases that I either managed my attorneys on or that I oversaw myself. And one of the best experiences that I got from there was the fact that a lot of these license holders were pro se and represented themselves. So I really learned the art of being the prosecutor while also trying to maintain neutrality and help someone that is pro se navigate a prosecutorial process. So I also had some additional experience there as well. And then at Aceto schools, to the extent that there was not a lot of litigation, because I was the in-house counsel managing all aspects of the legal team. I did have outside counsel that I would oversee, and we had one suit that was litigated in federal courts and another in state courts.
Claiborne's.
So you it sounds like most of your trial or litigation experience comes from state court. Is that correct?
Yes, I have never practiced in federal court myself. It is in state court.
Okay, and then you said you do have some jury trial experience. But approximately how many juries have you?
No.
At least three I'm sorry, I don't have the numbers in front of me, so I don't want to misspoke about 3 misdemeanor and then 3 or 4 jury trials when I was in that.
Okay, very good. And then what about in terms of bench trials? I heard you say you've done several bench trials when you were in narcotics, various state juries.
I do bench trials between traffic and narcotics has been well over 100.
And have you been evaluated by the bar associations? And if so, what were the outcome of the reviewing bar association?
Yes, back in 2019, I was reviewed by all the bar associations, and I was found qualified, recommended, or highly recommended by all of them except for one. And the one in which I was found not qualified was the Illinois State Bar Association. However, I do currently have an appeal pending with them currently, considering my recent appointment to the bench.
Thank you. And what type of community service have you done outside of your legal practice? What organizations are you involved in? What do you do outside of your practice of law?
So for over 10 years, until my appointment to the bench, I served as an executive director for the Casa Central Social Service Agency. And that's a social service agency that's been in Humboldt Park for over 65 years. It's an agency that my own grandfather participated in senior services in many years ago, so it's very dear to me personally. And they have programming for everyone, I like to say, from 0 to 99. They have in-home Head Start programming, they have a Head Start classroom at the facility, they have after-school programming for elementary school kids, teen programming, they have programs for adults looking to return to the workforce, they have transitional housing for those that are in need, and they have a very robust senior program as well. And so for over 10 years, I served on their board. I served on their Head Start committee, on their leadership and recruitment committee, executive committee, and the governance committee as well. The only reason why I'm not currently serving is that just to be cognizant of the canons of ethics in terms of serving on a board and fundraising and things like that, I want to make sure that there were no concerns about me serving on a board while sitting on the bench. Aside from that, I've also been involved in my home community. I live on the northwest side of the city. My home ward is the 39th ward. And again, until my appointment onto the bench, I was actually the recording secretary for the 39th ward Democratic organization. So we did a lot of get out the vote efforts, a lot of local, especially during the pandemic, just trying to connect with voters and keep them engaged, especially for the November election back in 2020. So a number of different initiatives within that 39th ward community. And again, I served until my appointment on that.
We're running really sort of short on time, and we've gone about 4 minutes over our scheduled time, Judge. So let me just quickly ask you a couple more questions, just so we can finish this. Has your campaign received any political endorsements? If so, can you quickly detail which ones they are and whether any of them are labor endorsements as well?
Yes, so I am endorsed by the Cook County Democratic Party. I have the endorsement of many different organizations across the county, city, and township. I'm endorsed by the Chicago Federation of Labor, by the Painters District 15, Local 73, the Iron Workers, Local 63, and there might be one or two more that are slipping me right now.
Right, and finally, if you are endorsed by the coalition, will you be willing to pay the $250 fee to cover costs incurred by the coalition to promote the endorsement of our judicial candidate?
Well, if my treasurer says I can, yes.
Very good. Thank you so much for appearing before us, Judge Dela Cruz. We wish you luck.
Okay, thank you so much again for this opportunity. I do appreciate it. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. All right, our next candidate is in the waiting room, and let them in. That is Judge Ruth Gudino. We're 5 minutes behind schedule, and
Did we start on time? I don't think we started on
Yes, we
time.
did.
Yeah, you
Judge
did.
Dela Cruz.
Started on
Well
time.
done.
Minute or two.
Yeah, you
All right,
did.
so we'll make it up, is what I'm saying.
All right, and Mabel Taylor is also in the waiting room. So viewers, next is Judge Ruth Gudino, and next after Judge Gudino will be Attorney Mabel Taylor. So Judge Gudino, I'm trying to look for your picture here, and I don't see you.
There you go. I was waiting to be let in, so my apologies. Can you see me now?
Yes, good to see you, Judge Gudino. Welcome to the Coalition PAC's Judicial Forum. It's the first night. We just had our first candidate, and so please bear with us. We're still we're just off to a wonderful start.
No apologies necessary. I'm here for whatever you need to answer your questions, and hopefully I will catch you guys up.
Very good. Well, Judge, I know that you are currently sitting in the vacancy of Judge.
I don't know.
Which vacancy?
McGurry.
Judge McGurry.
Kathy. That's
Catherine
correct.
McGurry. Yes, I remember when Judge McGurry was sitting at juvenile court back in the 90s. Can you please start by telling us a little bit about which schools you attended, including law school, college, and also why are you running for judge?
It's on mine.
Okay. So I have been practicing law for 26 plus years. I went to the University of Illinois at Chicago, now known as UIC, also affiliated with John Marshall. Graduated from there and went to the University of Iowa College of Law. Graduated from there. I was the only female Latina in my class. So like to say that the University of Iowa was not that diverse back in the day, but it was a very good education and it prepared me for what came afterwards. After graduating from law school in 1995, I was sworn in. I became an assistant public guardian. I was then recruited into the Cook County State's Attorney's Office in March of '97. I stayed there for a few years and then I left and worked for the United Auto Workers, General Motors, representing General Motors and Port Plant Union members on all personal matters involving contracts, real estate, estate planning, guardianship, and gave advice on criminal matters and traffic based on my background. I then returned to the Cook County State's Attorney's Office, in which I retired from that prior to my appointment in October of 2021. I served in various capacities on the executive staff as the Director of Legal Hiring, as a Deputy Supervisor, both in the 5th Municipal District Bridgeview and in Juvenile Court, as well as in Maywood as the Supervisor. I think that is a little bit about my background. I have over 60 felony juries, most of them are murders, over 200 plus bench trials and motion practices. I have litigated murders, rapes, violent crimes and offenses for most of my career.
Well, I think that takes care of several questions. You've answered quite a few.
I'm going to catch you up.
Ruth. Next is
Tell us, have you been evaluated by the bar associations? If so, how are you rated from every one of them?
From everyone, I have been recommended. In fact, I am highly recommended by 3 of the bars, that being the LGBTQ, the Hispanic Lawyers, and the Puerto Rican Bar Association. I have been found recommended and or qualified for all of the bars, in addition to those 3, as well as the Chicago Bar Association. And in some of those bar associations, the recommended or qualified is the highest rating possible.
Now I'm going to ask my co-hosts, Isaac Carruthers or Natalie House, to ask a few questions as well, so we can all.
Mr. Caholtra, I was wondering if I did not answer the question, which I just wanted to make sure I did, is why I wanted to be a judge. Would you afford me a moment just to answer that question?
Absolutely.
Thank you. It's personal to me. My mother and father were immigrants from Mexico. I'm a first generation in a lot of things, college, law school, and the judiciary. And my parents instilled in me to do hard work and to continue to look forward and protect people who couldn't be protected. I was my mom's translator since I was in first grade for all her medical appointments. And I saw how she was discriminated by people in the medical field. My mother was also falsely arrested in the 10th District Police Department. She was confused for something because she couldn't communicate. And a lot of those things limited my mother's ability to enjoy her freedoms. And I always knew growing up that that wasn't fair, but I didn't know what I could do to make a difference. And going to law school and now in the judiciary, I realized the difference that I can make is by listening to people regardless of any of their economic status, language barriers, sex, gender orientation, because what matters is that they simply want to be heard and had a voice, and you can't forget to treat them with respect. And I do it in honor of my mother. And being a judge does honor to her and to her memory.
Thank you, Jim.
Okay. All right, okay.
Yes,
Hello,
Mr.
Your
Carruthers.
Honor. How are
Good
you?
morning, Mr. Carruthers. I'm fine, thank you. And yourself?
Okay, well, it's not quite morning yet, but it's coming.
I'm sorry, good afternoon.
It's coming.
I'm pushing
But I
ahead.
know when you're running for office, it's kind of hard to keep time with a track a day because you're running day, night, evening, and all around. I understand that. It's so good to see you again, Your Honor.
Thank you, sir.
We've been doing these things for a while. Myself, Attorney Bob Caholtra, and also Attorney Natalie House. First time we've done it virtually, but so pleased you were able to join. Real quickly, you
Yes, sir.
answered so many of the questions early on about legal experience and trials and felony trials and all that you've done. Let me ask you this one. So do you belong to any political and or civic organization?
So, political or so I belong to various bar associations as well as the judicial associations. I was, prior to becoming a judge, I was active with the Fire Police Commission in my village of Westchester. I actually chaired that committee. I was the first female, the first non-law enforcement, and the first non-firefighter to lead that. I also sat on my daughter's school board at the Catholic school for all of her years. In the last 5 years, I chaired that. I've been involved with community organizations in the Hispanic communities, but currently I am simply involved in the bar associations and judicial associations. In regards to politicals, I have never been part of a official Democratic Party or politically affiliated organization.
Okay. Well, now that you're endorsed by the party, so there might be.
Yes, now I am endorsed by the Democratic Party,
Right.
so yes, I am affiliated with them, correct.
Well, I'm going to just yield to Natalie if she has something. We're going to move along.
Okay.
No.
I hope did I answer your question, Mr. Brothers?
Oh, no, that's fine. You answered a lot of our questions, believe me.
Okay, we're gonna catch up on time. I'm sorry, Ms. Howard.
We are going to catch up. Hello, Judge Cadino.
Good afternoon.
I just have 2 questions for you. In
Yes,
addition
ma'am.
to the endorsement by the Cook County Democratic Party, has your campaign received any other political endorsement?
Yes, so I have been endorsed by several of the committeemen that are part of the Democratic Party. I've also been endorsed by several unions, most importantly by the Chicago Federation of Labor. I've been endorsed by the IBEW for the electricians. I've been endorsed by Luna, I believe I said that correctly. Recently been endorsed by the Chicago Firefighters Union 2. I've received the endorsement also of the Illinois Italian American Political Coalition, the UHVA, which is the Hellenic Association. I'm trying to remember them all. I think that covers the most recent ones, and I apologize if I have been absent-minded, but the ones most outstanding are the Democratic Party, the Chicago Federation of Labor.
And thank you. And now, if you are endorsed by the coalition, would you be willing to contribute the $250 that's required in order to promote your campaign if you are endorsed?
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much, Judge Catino. It's nice to see you.
Thank you. Likewise, and thank you for giving me the time and the platform to introduce myself to your community and to each one of you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Well, we have Attorney Mabel Taylor, who is on next.
Okay, so do you guys need me to log off? Are we
Yes,
good?
please. Yes.
I'm just making sure. I don't want to get in trouble for logging off too early. You all have a lovely evening now.
All right.
Call it a good evening. Good night,
Take
everyone.
care.
Good night.
Right. We have Attorney Mabel Taylor, who is in the waiting room. And I will say that we had a question from the audience, but because we're running behind on time, we were unable to ask that question. And hopefully we can ask it of one of the next candidates if we have just a little bit more time. So without further ado, our next candidate is Attorney Mabel Taylor, and let me admit her into the room. And Ms. Taylor is running in the seat vacated by the late Judge Diane Cannon. That is the seat that Diana Lopez has been appointed to fill, and Monica Somerville is on the field candidate. So, Attorney Mabel Taylor, welcome.
Is she there?
I have admitted her, and I'm going to ask her to unmute. And
Sure.
here we are.
Oh, there she is. Hello.
Welcome, Ms. Taylor. How are you?
Fine, how are you doing this evening?
Great, great. I'll defer to Ms. House to begin.
Okay. Good evening, Attorney Taylor. Thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate you participating. And if you could just begin briefly by telling us about yourself. Tell us about what schools, what college and law school you attended, and tell us why you're running for judge.
Okay. Again, my name is Mabel Taylor. I'm a lifelong resident of the west side of Chicago. I attended grammar school at St. Malachi, which is located a block from where I currently live right now. I graduated from St. Patrick's High School. I went on after St. Patrick's High School. I went on to attend 2 years of Crane Junior College, which has been renamed and now is Malcolm X College. After spending 2 years in Crane Junior College, I went on to attend Roosevelt University, where I graduated with my Bachelor's of Arts. And after graduating from Roosevelt University, I went on to DePaul University College of Law, where I obtained my JD. I would like to be a judge because I bring to the bench a wealth of experience. I'm bringing to the bench 27 years of legal experience. And in that 27 years, there's very few areas of practice there's very few areas of law that my practice has not touched. I am more within the last 27 years, I have been a criminal defense attorney. Maybe 50% of my cases, 50 to 55% of my cases have been criminal defense. I've defended young Black men throughout Cook County, all over Cook County, and into going to Bloomington, Kane County, Will County, Woodstock, and Champaign. So I bring a wealth of knowledge to that. And not only that, I'm qualified because I am an arbitrator with Cook County mandatory arbitration. I've been an arbitrator now for the last 25 years. And with the arbitration, there's a panel and then we preside over cases and there's a ruling that's determined based upon the information that is presented. So I bring a wide range of information. I understand how the system works. I feel that I'm, extremely qualified, because one of the things I think a judge needs to do is a judge needs to have not only their legal skills, but they need to have research capabilities, because I find in dealing with criminal, civil, a lot of cases, sometimes judges are just not prepared to rule on certain cases. And one of the things that I've brought to my
Just Taylor, let me just stop you. Let me just stop you right there, because we do have some other questions for you.
Okay.
And so you did answer one of our questions in terms of why you wanted to become. You told us about your practice, but I want to get into what kind of litigation experience do you have? How many trials have you done, and how many jury trials have you done? And if you could tell us where those trials took place, were they in state court or federal court?
I've had now I'm guesstimating because I can't tell you totally. I've had, I'm gonna say over 15 jury trials. Most of my jury trials have been in criminal court, and they've been criminal. Most of my jury trials have been in criminal court. I've had one federal jury trial, and I've had a couple civil trials. And I dealt with a personal injury case, and and a personal injury case. Basically all my criminal trials have been juries, with the exception of the one personal injury case.
So you have jury trial experience. What about bench trial experience? Can you tell us about that?
A wealth of bench trial experience, because we're working with a lot of the cases dealing with, again, criminal law, because 50% of my practice comes from that. I have a lot of experience with jury trials throughout Cook County.
Have you been evaluated?
Bench trials, I'm sorry.
Attorney Taylor, have you been evaluated by the bar associations? If so, how were you rated from each bar association?
I just completed an evaluation with Alliance last week, and I'm waiting right now they said that I should be receiving my evaluation sometime either toward the end of this week or perhaps no later, because I did Alliance, which is about 12 different bar associations. And they said I will not get those until sometime either end of this week or next week.
Okay, thank you. And I'm going to turn it over now to Alderman Brothers.
Thank you, Natalie. Yeah, hello, Attorney Taylor. How are you?
I'm fine, Mr. Brothers. How are you?
Very good. Thanks for joining. When you indicated you recently are being evaluated by the Alliance, have you ever been evaluated by them before? I know you run before the Alliance or any other bar association.
Yeah, I was evaluated before. That's correct.
Was it by the Alliance?
I think it was once by the Alliance. It's been about 8 or 9 years ago, maybe.
Okay. And what kind of ratings did you get then?
I think at that point, what I remember, I think it was not recommended.
Okay. Has your campaign received any political endorsements of any kind, whether it be political or union affiliated or other organizations?
Not at this time.
Not at this time. Okay. That's all I have. Thank you so much. Bob?
Just one of our standard questions, which is, if you are endorsed by the coalition, will you be able and willing to pay the $250 fee to cover the costs incurred by the coalition to promote any endorsement?
I wouldn't have a problem with that.
Now, we also had a question from the audience, and that was whether or not you believe that landlords can fit fairly in forcible detainer court, whether they can give just rulings in forcible detainer cases.
I thought that was a question for the previous.
I think
About a sitting judge owning a piece of property. So, and she's not a sitting judge.
All right, then we'll take that. I was trying to get that question, but you're right, Natalie. We'll ask that of the sitting judges. But even candidates, I think, may be able to have an opinion on
Okay, you want to repeat the question?
that. Do you feel sitting judges who are landlords can make fair rulings in forcible detainer cases?
Well, I believe the judge takes an oath oath of office to comply with everything with respect to that oath. And if the judge is complying with the oath of office, then in certain circumstances, they should be able to be fair with the tenant. If they're complying with all the statutes that go into play as for to what a judge should do or what they can't do, and if there's any undue influences, if they go through the checklist, and it's a long checklist, so if they can make it through the checklist and still survive it, then perhaps they may, under a limited circumstance, be able to do that.
Right. Thank you very much, Attorney Mabel Taylor. We appreciate you joining us and sharing with us your background and your credentials. And we wish you the best of luck in this campaign.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Next, we have Aileen Bandari. And Ms. Bandari, as you know, is running in the 11th Sub-Circuit. And so welcome, Ms. Bandari. She's still got her ASA, Assistant State's Attorney designation, as all courts require when attorneys are zooming in. So thank you for joining us, Aileen. And
Thank you.
welcome to the West Side Coalition PAC. As you know, our Zoom meeting is being streamed live via Facebook as well as via YouTube. And so we have some questions that are standard questions which we ask the candidates. And so let me begin by asking you to tell us about yourself by telling us which schools you attended, including college and law schools, and why you're running for judge.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you to the committee for being here today. I appreciate you taking the time to do this. We can't get this done without your willingness to participate and volunteer your time. So thank you for being here. I am born and raised in Chicago, in the northwest side of Chicago. I went to school close here to the west side at Belmont and Austin and Notre Dame High School for girls. I graduated from Loyola University with a degree in communications, radio, TV, film. I thought I was going to be on TV, but I didn't. I ended up going to DePaul Law School after taking some time off and helping my family run one of their businesses that they had here in Chicago. So I graduated from DePaul. I was the student bar president also while I was at DePaul Law School, and I also earned a couple of awards while I was at DePaul. Number one of them being the Diversity Award, and also the Student Service Award from the Student Bar Association for all the service I gave to the law school while I was attending school there. And one of the reasons why I want to be a judge is it continues all the public service and all the community service that I have done throughout my life, not just my job as a state's attorney, and not just the volunteer work that I do as being a lawyer. I do a lot of volunteer work through a lot of different community organizations, whether it's a domestic violence shelter. I volunteered in the South Side, in the South Suburbs for expungement expos to help people with their backgrounds. I do mock trials, as well as the Women Everywhere, which is bringing CPS students to the courthouse. So those are some of the things that I do for service outside of my job that has, nothing to do with what I do for work. And so
you're probably covering a few questions down the list already.
Oh, sorry.
That's fine. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your legal experience and the areas that you've worked, how long you've been a lawyer, that kind of stuff.
I have been a lawyer since 2002. I've been practicing for almost 19 years. I have a significant amount of litigation and trial experience, well over 500 bench trials and motions, as well as jury trials. I've been a state's attorney for that entire time, so many of the cases that I cover are all criminal. I've gone through the domestic violence division, prosecuting cases and advocating for for victims of domestic violence. I've done criminal sexual assaults in cases where children are victims of sexual assaults or in criminal sexual abuse cases, as well as guns, drugs, and also all the violent cases that you can think of. Aggravated hijackings, armed robberies, attempt murder, shootings, as well as murder cases. I've tried all those cases and prosecuted all those cases for a number of years. In terms of qualifications, I have pretty much been inside a courtroom. This has not been a part-time job for me. It's a full-time job. I've been in that courtroom almost every single day of my legal career, and I have a significant amount of motion practice as well as trial experience.
What's
I'm
this?
also handling, I would just like to say, handling, as a state's attorney, we have like our caseloads are like 500 cases, right? So I have that courtroom experience and able to manage cases as well, the know-how to manage a courtroom.
What I was saying was, you're in a specific unit now, right? Which is like is it kind of like Community Prosecution Bureau or something?
That was a former name. Now it's called the Community Justice Center. So I was a Community Justice Center Assistant State's Attorney since 2019. And there are 4 Community Justice Centers. I cover the west side of Chicago, which is the 15th and 25th Police District. I've been doing that for a number of years. I was recently promoted to the supervisor of all the centers, which covers South, North, Central, and West. But as with our office, they have not found someone to replace me. So I've been doing double duty since October. I'm still the state's attorney assigned to West while also supervising the other centers. So a lot of the programming that I do on the west side of Chicago is for crime prevention and violence reduction. I bring a lot of resources and really try to figure out how, besides prosecuting pushers of violence, trying to figure out ways to prevent people from getting into the criminal justice system. That's a goal, that's part of our goal, is the prevention and problem solving side for the state's attorney's office.
I'm going to allow Natalie and Isaac Carruthers to ask you a few questions, because I don't want to hog all the questions.
How are you, Attorney Bandari? This is Natalie House. You have detailed, I think, for the coalition, your litigation experience, and you do have extensive state court and criminal litigation experience. Have you been evaluated by the bar associations? If so, how were you rated from each reviewing bar association?
I have been rated by every single bar association, and I have had those ratings for a number of years, and I've been found qualified by the Illinois State Bar Association, the Chicago Bar Association, or recommended, by the Asian American Bar Association. I was found highly recommended by LAGBAC, the LGBTQ Bar Association, and the Puerto Rican Bar Association. The Cook County Bar Association also found me qualified. So those are, there's an Arab American, which is a recommended. So there was 13 bar associations that participated. So I've been found either highly recommended, or qualified by every single bar association.
Thank you. Can you please outline your any community service, any political organizations that you have worked with outside of your legal experience?
My community service, I have been part of the Asian American Coalition of Chicago since the early 90s. I've volunteered my time on there. I've served the homeless on Thanksgiving in Uptown for the last 30 years with my family. I am now on the executive board of the Asian American Coalition. I just used to be one of the board members. I was recently asked to join the board as executive board member. I'm on the board of the National Asian Prosecutor Association. I sit on the board of the Filipino American Lawyers. I'm a past president of the South Asian Bar Association of Chicago. I participate in Lawyers in the Classroom, which brings legal information to CPS students. That's some of the volunteer stuff I do. I'm also a mentor. I have been a mentor for a number of years to law students at the various law schools, including the Diversity Scholarship Foundation, which is a particular mentorship for first generation law students. As my parents are immigrants to this country, they came here in the 60s. I don't have any other lawyers or anyone that I know that's really into politics. So, I felt like a fish out of water. So giving back to students who also are first generation lawyers is something that I do as well. Besides, I also do mock trials and for high school and law schools as well. And I volunteer for Women Everywhere as well as domestic violence shelters. That's what I do on my free time.
Very good. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Alderman Carruthers.
Hi, how are you?
Well, yeah,
Ms.
Hi,
Bandari. Thank you for joining this evening. taking time out of your campaign. I know that you're probably pretty busy these days. You're running in a sub-circuit, which there are, well, there are many, there are several sub-circuit races, I guess, going on, but the particular area that we operate in, the West Side Coalition, we only pretty much operate in two sub-circuits. That's the 7th and the 11th. So I'd like to ask you, has your campaign received any political endorsements, either from political folks or from labor or any other organizations?
Yes, I have the IVIPO. I've received their endorsement. I received the endorsement of the Illinois, the Italian American Political Action Committee. I received, I was supposed to announce it. I think I'm able to announce it today. The Asian American Caucus, which is another political association. I received their endorsement just this weekend. And I still have a few more, I believe, endorsements that will be coming in shortly. So I'm sitting for, I put in for a couple of other endorsements, and I'm waiting to hear back. There's still appointments that are happening this week and even next week.
Okay, great. And the final question that I would have, as you know, when you run for political offices, particularly if you were running countywide, and if you were slated by the party, you know, the party always asks for a contribution from the slated candidates. We're talking countywide. Of course, they don't get involved so much in the sub-circuits. But if you were endorsed by this coalition, would your campaign be willing to contribute upward to about $250 to cover the costs incurred by the coalition to promote your endorsement?
Yes, absolutely. I think that's a fair amount, and I understand it takes some money sometimes when you're campaigning. I ran countywide in 2020, so you know that I understand a little bit about that campaign process. So I absolutely would definitely do that, and I would like to also point out that in 2019 I also made the shortlist for associate judge. Although I wasn't a finalist, I made the shortlist for associate judge out of 250 applicants. I was selected out of to be 30 on the shortlist. So I kind of think those are my qualifications.
No, you were a finalist.
I was a finalist, but I wasn't the appointed.
Some of us never made it to finalists, so that was really something.
That's a great
It's just an honor to be nominated. That's what we say. It was an honor to be nominated for that shortlist.
All right, thank you, Attorney Bandari, for coming, for
Thank you
joining
so
us
much.
today.
I appreciate it. Thank you for taking the time.
You're good.
All right, our next candidate is in our waiting room, and our next candidate is Judge Rena Van Tine. So let me let Judge Rena Van Tine in. Or her audio is connecting, and Judge Rena Van Tine is in the.
Hello.
She's in the leaving vacancy.
The vacancy created by Pamela Leaning's retirement, who was a full circuit judge and sat in the Maywood division, Maybrook, most recently. Judge, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Welcome to the West Side Coalition PAC's Judicial Forum. We're delighted to have you. We know that you're a candidate in the Leaning vacancy. We want to ask you just a few questions, and we want you to begin by telling us about yourself, by telling us where you went to school, where you went to college, law school, and most importantly, why you're running for judge.
Sure. Well, I'm Judge Rena Marie Van Tine. I've been a lawyer licensed to practice law for 36 years. I've been a judge for the last 21 years. I was initially in 2001 as an associate judge. Last year, the Supreme Court appointed me as a circuit court judge. So I do need to run and win in the June 28th primary election. By way of background, I was born in India, grew up partially in India, partially in New York. I went to law school at New York Law School, undergrad at Oakland University, did some graduate school at Michigan State. But this is the longest, Chicagoland area is the longest I've lived anywhere. So at this point, I feel like I am from Chicago, as I moved here in '85, right after law school. So why? I guess I was a highly experienced lawyer, and now I am a highly experienced judge. So I've done the private practice. I know what it's like to juggle everything in private practice. I've worked for the government. I've been a prosecutor at 26th Street. I've been a defense lawyer for criminal misdemeanor defense in private practice. I've defended Cook County Hospital and all the doctors that got sued in medical negligence cases. And on the civil side, I've also been a plaintiff's lawyer. So I've tried or presided over 120 plus civil jury trials hearing complex civil cases, and I have enjoyed my time at the bench. My bar ratings have pretty much been the same throughout the years that I've been a judge, and even before I became a judge. Have been found highly qualified by the Chicago Bar, the Illinois State Bar, and well qualified by the Chicago Council, as well as all of the other, got positive bar ratings from all the other bars. When I first became a judge in 2001, I was the first female Indian American judge in the United States. So, back then we did not have really any Indian politicians. Congressman Raja Krishnamurthy, Senator Ram Villavalam, they were not around. They happened to be honorary co-chairs of my campaign also. And so every ribbon cutting ceremony on Devon or new dentist office opening, I had to go through. So I've been very involved with my community and also on the bench. I've been involved in various bar associations. I serve as the vice president of the Asian American Judges Association, which is a new bar association. I have been a past president of the Asian American Bar Association. In terms of assignments, I've spent the majority of my time on the bench in the child protection court. So I've worked with abused and neglected children, and by way of personal background, my wife, I'm a mom. I've been married 34 years. I have a daughter who is in law school now, and this perspective of being a mom and a wife helped me in juvenile court as well. And I believe I have made a positive difference in the lives of many children, their families, and also in my current assignment. So I sit in the law division. I'm a law jury judge. So I hear high exposure civil cases. So everything that goes to jury trial, it's a civil case. That's what I've been hearing. When the pandemic first hit, I was switched to a motion call. The motion judges were just getting killed with so many different cases, and there was no outlet for juries to be tried initially during the pandemic. So I handled a motion call where I presided over a number of summary judgment motions, managed discovery, and some of the more complex civil cases that really the motion judges didn't have as much time for. But we've segued back into jury trials, and I'm going at it again. So, I appreciate your time, and if you have any questions of me, I'm happy to answer.
Well, Judge, you've covered many, many, many of the questions that we had here, but I think there's just a few left, and I'm going to defer to my co-hosts, Natalie House and Alderman Isaac Carruthers, and I think they have just a few more questions as well.
Okay.
Certainly. And, good evening, Judge Van Tine. Thank you very much for joining us today. You have answered most of our questions as it relates to your litigation and your background, your bar associations. You kind of touched on your community service, but a little bit as well. But if you can, just expand on your community service outside of bar associations. I know you said you're past president of the Asian American Bar Association, but is there any other political or civic organizations that you belong to? If you can
Sure. So, like the last 21 years, I've been on the bench, so I cannot be political anymore. But before becoming an associate judge, I was very involved in, let's say the Indo-American Democratic Organization. I was joint treasurer of that organization. I was a Gore delegate to the Democratic National Convention. I was a co-founder and chair of the Women's Bar Association PAC, Political Action Committee. I routinely held fundraisers for various candidates, which is something that you cannot do as a judge. When I became a judge, I transitioned more into more of the community organizations. For example, the Asian American Coalition has given me awards over the course of the years. So that's a group where all 17 Asian American communities come together and host a dinner for a couple thousand people, anywhere from 1,500 to 2,000 people. And it is a Asian American political empowerment event. I currently serve on the board of the Chinese Mutual Aid Association. It is a organization that helps immigrants and refugees. It was started by Vietnamese refugees, and but it doesn't only serve the Vietnamese and Chinese community. It actually serves a broader community, despite the name. So, as part of that, I'm involved with the Young Women Warriors. This is helping mentor girls from the community. I have been sitting on that board for a number of years as well. So when
Very good.
yeah, so I've been like active, but mostly bar associations. I would say, ever since I became a judge, I have always been a member of the Illinois Judicial Council, which is the network of African American judges. That network helped me considerably when I was an associate judge candidate. I tapped into that. I've never forgotten that support. So I have always been, while I've never been an officer or a director, especially when close friends need things in that organization, I do step up.
Okay, very good. Now, I know that you have already been endorsed by the Cook County Democratic Party. Besides that huge political endorsement, has your campaign received any other political endorsements from any other political organizations or labor unions?
Yes, CFL has endorsed the Chicago firefighters, Local 134, the electrical and operating engineers. There are a bunch of unions have endorsed me. Last week, Senator Dick Durbin also endorsed me. There are a lot of endorsements. Actually, if you go to www.judgevantine.com, that is my website. There's an endorsement tab, and underneath it, there's a list of literally scores of endorsements.
Fantastic. Congratulations on those endorsements. And I believe that your website is posted on the YouTube channel so that everyone can see. I will leave the last and probably most important question for our Alderman Ike Carruthers to ask you. I'll turn it over to Alderman Carruthers.
Thank you, Nellie. Hello, Your Honor. How are you?
Hello, Alderman. Good.
Good. It's good. So good to have you.
Yeah,
Well, I can tell you one thing. We really didn't have to ask a lot of questions because in your presentation, you pretty much answered every question that we probably would have asked, maybe with the exception of this last question.
okay.
This last question won't be daunting to you because it's the same question that the Democratic Party asked you when you were at Slaney. And they asked you if you were endorsed, would your campaign be willing to contribute to support the efforts of this group to promote your endorsement. The only difference is the amount that this organization is asking for is about $250. So I know that kind of pales compared to what the Democratic Party asked for. But at any rate,
Well, your endorsement is very important to me. I wouldn't be here making a pitch for myself if it wasn't. So of course, yes, I would. I would be happy to support this group. So.
Right. Thank you so much. And that's all I really have. And so we will see the best of luck.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Judge Van Tine.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, now we have two candidates, and I'm going to admit both of them because I think there's some scheduling issue, and let's just see if we can resolve that. We have John Ehrlich, who is a candidate in the appellate court first district race. I believe that's Judge John Ehrlich, so I don't want to be disrespectful. And we have Judge Diana Lopez, and I received some communication that there may be a scheduling issue where perhaps Judge Lopez needs to go first, and I'm wondering if that's okay with Judge Ehrlich.
I just received a message from Judge Lopez indicating that she would like Judge Ehrlich to go ahead of her.
So
Do we have Judge Ehrlich here? Is he here?
we do have Judge Ehrlich, and he's on mute. And so I'm sorry, Natalie, you said that Judge Lopez said it's okay to have Judge Ehrlich go first?
Yes.
Okay, then I'm going to put Judge Lopez back in the waiting room. Sorry, Judge. All right, and we have Judge Ehrlich. Thank you for joining us.
Well, sorry, I tried to respond, but I couldn't. My computer wasn't letting me answer. I certainly have no problem with Judge Lopez going first.
That's okay. That's okay.
Sorry about that. I was sitting here clicking every key possible, and I couldn't respond.
Oh, that's not a problem at all. Don't worry.
I was even yelling at the computer.
We've all yelled at the computer from time to time, I'm sure. I just wanted to see who was going to lead this. And I believe that is that I will begin. And let me begin by asking you, you're currently a sitting judge, is that right?
I've been a judge for 10 years, yes.
All right. Thank you, Judge. So let's begin. If you can tell us a little bit about yourself by telling us which schools you attended, including where you went to college, where you went to law school, but most importantly, why are you running for the appellate court?
Sure. Well, I went to Northwestern as an undergraduate. I was a history and political science double major. I have a certificate of African studies, and I actually did the field research for my thesis in South Africa. After college, I went to Washington for 4 years and worked for a member of Congress. Actually got a bill through Congress, a major amendment to the Superfund Reauthorization Act, listing federal facilities for the first time as part of the Superfund cleanup. After that, I came back to Northwestern for law school. I was an editor-in-chief and a national moot court champion at Northwestern. And then after I graduated, I started in private practice. I was an antitrust and appellate lawyer for 7 years here in Chicago. But after that, I realized private practice and doing corporate work wasn't for me. I really had a calling to do work in the public sector. So that's when I left and joined Corporation Counsel, City of Chicago. And I stayed there for 18 years. I did a fantastic job. I was first in the appeals division and then in the torts division. I eventually became head of the torts division, and I ran the torts division for 6 years. I had a staff of 35 lawyers, 15 staffers, and then a budget of about $56 million that was responsible for. By the time I ended both public and private practice, I had tried 25 jury trials. I had written and argued 22 appeals, both in federal and state court. And I thought at that point it was time to have another challenge, and that's why I ran for judge. I ran in the 8th Judicial Subcircuit, which is along the lakefront, basically from Hollywood down to Chinatown, Ashland to the lake. And in 2012, I had 7 competitors, including 2 sitting judges, and I won with double the number of votes of my closest competitor, which was, I have to say, was nice. I think one of the things I'm most proud of is when I was at Corp Counsel, I drafted the petition for domestic partner benefits, that I gave to Mayor Daley and my alderman at that time, Bernie Hansen. I drafted it. We got about 75% of the attorneys at Corporation Council to sign it. And within 6 months, we had domestic partner benefits for not just Corporation Council, but for all City of Chicago employees. That was back in 1997. And I'm very proud of that. I became a judge in 2012. I first started in traffic like everyone else does. I spent a year in chancery foreclosure, which was a very tough call. That was at the time, the height of the foreclosure crisis. We had over 85,000 foreclosures going on at that time. Tried to do everything possible.
May I interrupt you just for a moment, Judge? While we're talking about foreclosure, I know foreclosure is not that similar to forcible detainer, but do you believe judges who are landowners or are property owners or are landlords can sit fairly and sit and hear fairly landlord-tenant disputes in forcible detainer court?
You just distinguished there. I think certain people who own a house or a condo, I think certainly could. I do think there are certain potential risks for property owners who rent out, for instance, they own a 6 flat or, an apartment building. Let's just say if that were I would not hear those cases. I think that is a real, even if there's no conflict, it potentially shows a conflict, and that's what we're trying to avoid, is any semblance of conflict. Right. Anyway, then I was in foreclosure for a year, and then as of January 2014, I've been sitting in the law motions section where I hear personal injury, wrongful death cases. And when they call it a motion call, that's what it is. Before pandemic, I had 1,450 cases on my docket. I now have around 2,000. I try to issue 2 to 3 written opinions a week. That's what I need to do, just basically to stay even. I hear everything from construction negligence to legal malpractice, medical malpractice, nursing home cases, things that deal with, non-statutory torts, cases that deal with the human condition. And that's what really makes me want to be a judge, is dealing with that. And to answer then your second question, I think that all that leads to, for me at least, a logical step to the appellate court, given my trial experience, my appellate experience, and then the work I've done as a motion judge, where I research and write all the time. I'm the only judge in the state of Illinois who publishes all of his written opinions. If you go on Chief Judge Evans' website, you'll see every written opinion I've ever drafted as a judge. It's my dedication to transparency and access to justice. I don't know why other judges don't do it, but I do.
In light of those questions, can I ask you, and we're only asking this of our appellate court candidates, and that is how many times they've been reversed by the appellate court, and if they were reversed, what the reasons may have been, in a summary fashion, of course.
Sure. I recently did a back check of all of the decisions I've had over the last 10 years. I have almost an 82% affirmance rate, which I think is excellent, and most judges would say the same thing. It actually is at the very high end of the other judges who sit on my floor. And just to be clear, we get appealed a lot. After the criminal division, the section that's appealed the most is the motion section of the law division, just because we have so many cases. We deal with so many complex issues. So I think I've been appealed 96 times, but my affirmance rate is just right at 82%, which I'm very proud of. And in terms of,
we appreciate you having that number and having looked back at your records. We really appreciate that.
Well, and I take really seriously what the appellate court and the Supreme Court says, an affirmance or a reversal. That's why you have an appellate court. They're the check and balance in our judicial system. And, you learn from what they say. And, I always like reading. I'm a law nerd, I admit it. I like reading this stuff to see how they analyze things, how I thought something this way, they thought something that way, but it either came out the same or came out differently. But that's what's great about the law. That's what I really enjoy.
I'm going to turn it over to my co-host, Attorney Natalie House, as well as Alderman Isaac Carruthers.
Hello, Judge Ehrlich. Thank you very much for joining the West Side Coalition PAC this evening. We really do appreciate your participation today, and enjoyed listening to about your legal career as well as your judicial career. But outside of your legal and judicial career, do you volunteer with any community service organizations? Do you belong to any civic organizations?
Well, I've limited myself since being a judge to a lot of organizations that I feel could potentially lead to a conflict. So that's one thing I don't do. One thing I'm a big supporter of, and I've been a big supporter of for a long time, is a particular program. I'm a classical music fanatic, so I listen to WTTW. I listen to WFMT, the radio station, and they have something called the Bach to School program. And it's a substantial contribution, but what it does is it supports music education in underserved schools, gives either musical instruments or music lessons, teaching plans to teachers, and I think it's just a fantastic program. I'm also a big supporter of Moshe House. I don't know if you know Moshe House. It's it's a Jewish organization, but it's non-denominational, and they're all over the world. And we're having actually a fundraiser in 2 weeks to support Moshe House in the Ukraine. They help refugees and people in need. So I do that. I was also on the board of the AIDS Living Remembrance Project for many years. If any of you live along Lakefront, right just south of Belmont, there's now a big Keith Haring statue, a big green walking man. That is actually 25 years. It took that long to get an AIDS Living Remembrance Project. That I was on the board when that thing started, and it's finally coming to fruition. And I'm really, really pleased with that.
Very good. At this time, I'll turn it over to Alderman Carruthers.
Thank you, Natalie. Hello, Your Honor. How are you?
Hi, Alderman. How are you?
Good. Thank you for joining us this evening and taking time out of your very busy schedule. You're running countywide, and countywide, as many might say, is really no joke. You know,
whoever made this county this big is off my Christmas card list.
I believe it. Yeah, it's kind of hard to walk the county. Huh? So there's a couple of things, Your Honor. Has your campaign received any political endorsements of any type?
Well, I'm slated by the Cook County Democratic Party. I don't know if you know what happened. There was originally one seat, the hall vacancy, that went to Judge Dominique Ross. And I did not want to run against Dominique. She's a friend of mine, and she's a great candidate. And so I chose not to run against her. I took the alternate position. And then early March, Justice Harris made a late retirement. So the party, I'm telling you the inside story, the party called me on a Saturday morning before I even had breakfast, before I had my coffee, and told me that I was a slated candidate in the new Harris vacancy. So I've been at this since early March. And before that, I had gotten the endorsement from, John Daly, Iris Martinez, Rob Martwick. I'm supported by Senator Don Harmon. Garrett Peterson. Maggie O'Keefe in the 40th Ward, Kelly Cassidy in the 49th Ward. Tracy Katz-Moole in Northfield Township. Calvin Jordan and Rich. So it's been a remarkable whirlwind, and what I'm really proud of is the groundwork that I laid last fall. I was willing to put that aside for 2 years, has now come back to the fore, and it's nice to be remembered. They remember me.
That's great. That's great. I do have one other question, which is always an interesting question for candidates. As you being a slated candidate by the party, you'll be very familiar with this question. Now, if you are endorsed by the coalition, will your campaign, assuming you have a treasurer, I'm sure you have to ask their permission, well, would your campaign be willing and able to contribute upwards to about $250 to cover the expenses that are incurred for purpose of promoting your endorsement?
I will talk to my treasurer, and I can assure you that would not be a problem.
Yeah, right. Well, I'm pretty sure, I know.
I was gonna say, because look, let's talk turkey here. I mean, you guys have run a really good organization. It reaches a lot of people. And it's not the fact that yes, it's important to me that it translates to a vote. But what the real issue here is the fact that you're taking an evening out of your time to talk to judicial candidates only tells me that you people really do care about the judiciary. And frankly, anybody who cares about the judiciary that much deserves my support.
Well, thank you for that, Your Honor, and I know you probably got that same question from the Democratic Party, because when they called you before you had your coffee, I'm pretty sure the next question was, Your Honor, you know there's going to be a little something that we're going to be looking for to help fund the party.
For that, I'll just say no comment.
Thank you for coming.
But you know the answer.
Thank you for coming.
Thanks for joining us, and from one law geek to another. Thank you.
Well, seriously, thank you for all your time tonight. I mean, like, as I said, taking time out to do this for judicial candidates puts you guys heads and shoulders above everybody else, and I truly, truly appreciate it as a judge. And for those of us who really care about the judiciary, this means a lot.
Alrighty.
Thank you so much. Have a good one.
Okay.
Take care.
Next candidate is Diana Lopez. Let's let Judge Lopez back in. Judge, thank you for joining us. And Judge Lopez is running, as I mentioned earlier, in the vacancy created by the passing of Judge Diane Gordon Cannon, who sat for a long time at 26 in California. So Natalie, I think maybe
Is she on?
Yes, here's Ms. Lopez. Looks like she's at the same function that Ruth Godino was.
Yes, we're all here at the vote function.
Zoom up and down.
Hello, Judge Lopez. Thank you. Welcome to the West Side Coalition PAC. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. We are running a little bit late, but we are trying to catch up. So we would like for you this evening to introduce yourself to our coalition members by telling us about your background, including where you went to college and law school, and tell us why you are running for chair.
Okay. So I'm Judge Diana Lopez. I have been on the bench for a very short time. October 2021 is when I got appointed as an associate judge. I went to Loyola University School of Law. I went to undergrad at the University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana. I want to continue to bring the diversity, the qualified diversity that is needed on the bench to reflect the Cook County constituents. So as an associate judge, I know that all of you know how important it is to have full circuit judges who can continue to bring that diversity as for associate judges and also for the vote for the chief judge. And so that is one of my commitments from the very beginning, even before I became an associate judge, which is why I started my campaign way even before I thought that I was going to be honored and humbled to get the associate judge position.
Okay, so very good. Please tell us about your legal experience. So where have you worked? So what type of law have you practiced? How many years have you been practicing law at that time?
So prior to my appointment, I practiced for 20 years, primarily in the civil litigation area. I started as a Cook County State's Attorney, and that in the Child Support Enforcement Division, in the Child Protection Division, kind of very early on knowing that I was going to go into family law and anything that related to children. I was very focused on wanting to help families and community because my parents they were both educators in the Chicago public school system. And so watching them as I grew up, watching them committed to children and the efforts to help families, I held that very near and dear to my heart. And I decided to go into law to be able to do the same thing, but in a different way. So I went to Loyola very specifically because at that time they were the only school that had the family law and child certificate. So I was able to obtain that. And I went to the Cook County State's Attorney's Office very specifically to also, really gain those litigation experience that you get when you are a state's attorney. And I was able to use those skills to gain a very successful private practice.
Okay, and thank you very much. Can you please detail for the coalition about your litigation experience? So specifically, we want to know about like how many jury trials have you done, how many bench trials have you done, and where have you gotten that experience? Has it been in federal court or has it been in the state?
So all of them state court. In domestic relations, you actually try to stay away from trials, but you also are working simultaneously to help people during the most difficult transitions of their life. So they're going through so much drama and so many things that they need to work with. So honestly, I felt that that was one of the, the biggest challenges, but also one of the biggest successes that I had while I was in practice, that I was able to help people really navigate that world and either avoid trials, or if we had to go to trial, then we would go to trial. I probably in my 20 years did about 25 bench trials, full-blown domestic relations trials, adoption trials. I also did about 15. I was also a guardian ad litem since 2006 in the county division in adoption court since 2015, shortly after I had my daughter when I was 40 years old. In the domestic relations division, because that definitely gave me a lot more work on my plate when I was a GAL child rep in domestic relations. In terms of, what experience I bring to the bench, it's, problem solving. I come with a very mediator friendly, let's not drag things out and make things worse for the litigant. Let's try to come with a problem-solving mentality, and that's how I like to practice, and how now I am implementing that on the bench.
Great, thank you very much. With that, I'm going to turn the questioning over to former Alderman Ike Carruthers. Thank you, Judge Lopez.
Hello, Your Honor. How are you?
Hi, good evening. Good to see you.
Good. Thanks for taking time out to join us this evening. I know you're on the campaign trail, and it's a busy time, and you're running countywide. As I told the previous candidate, it's a big county.
Yes, it is. It's a big county.
Thank
Thank you. Thank you for acknowledging that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and it's kind of hard to walk it, So you seem like you've had a lot of experience in what you've been doing, and you recently been appointed as an associate, so you already have a feel for the bench. That's the one thing, you already are a judge. So what could you just tell us about your bar ratings? I'm sure you've been rated, and how they turned out for you.
Sure. So for the associate judge process, I had to go through the Illinois State Bar Alliance process, and I also went through the Chicago Bar Association process, and I'm happy to report that I was able to gain all of the endorsements or all of the bar ratings recommended and qualified by all of the associations that participated in my ratings. So I'm very humbled to have received those.
Okay. And I'm not sure if I missed anything, but did you outline your community involvement, community service?
Sure, yeah. So I've been very committed. My pro bono work has been something that has been pivotal to me during my entire career. As a state's attorney, as a young state's attorney, I would volunteer to every single type of clinic, Chicago Volunteer Legal Services. I also, any type of case that I could take on as a pro bono case, I'd be happy to do that. For experience, most recently, I am on the board for the, it's called the Green Light Family Services. It used to be called the Center for Law and Social Work, which helps grandparents and any family that wants to adopt or establish guardianship for children in the probate or the adoption court to guide them through that process, whether it be also through the social work aspect and or the legal aspect. I also serve, I'm the incoming chair of the Schiller, DuConto, and Fleck Family Advisory Board at the DePaul Law School, where I also was an adjunct professor to many young students who, that's actually one of the best roles that I played was to, or that I love, is to be a professor and to be a mentor to the young law students and to, upcoming lawyers in our community.
Okay. All righty. All right, Bob, I'll give it back to you.
All right, I had to unmute myself. I know a lot of people around me would rather I muted myself more often, but.
Don't worry, I spend a lot of my day saying you're muted, sir. You're muted.
We had a penny for each time we had to say that. Judge Lopez, one of the members in our committee is very interested in the question from almost every candidate, and we're trying to ask as many candidates as we can, and that is, do you believe that there's something inappropriate or that it's unethical for property owning judges to sit in forcible detainer court?
Property owning judges to be in forcible detainer court. Okay, so I've obviously not ever sat in that particular area of in that division. However, I will say that if I ever feel that there's any conflict or anything that I do not believe I can impartially and be impartial or fair, I obviously would recuse myself. I am an owner of an investment property that is known by my financial, my economic interest form that is, that is available to everyone. But I've actually never thought of that question. And I guess, again, I would say that, as judges, we are there to follow the law, listen to the facts, apply the law. And that is what I would do no matter if I had an interest in my own particular investment. Again, though, however, if I had thought that I would not be able to be impartial or fair, I would definitely recuse myself.
Now, we also want to ask you about whether your campaign has received any political endorsements. And we want you to include any labor endorsements from any labor organizations as well.
So endorsements generally, I've been endorsed by the Cook County Democratic Party. That was in December 2021, which I worked very hard to accomplish that for over almost a year since the election was pushed to June. And then I was endorsed by the caucus during that process. I've been endorsed by many different elected officials throughout the Chicago and Cook County area during that process of being endorsed by the Cook County Democratic Party, leading up to that. Most recently, I was endorsed by the Chicago Federation of Labor. I was also endorsed by LUNA, endorsed by the Iron Workers. Most recently, sorry, I am getting many text messages from my slate mates to make sure that I am okay because we were all here and everybody's leaving. Let me see, what else did I just recently receive? I'm waiting for the personal PAC, which I think will be a very pivotal endorsement as well. We are waiting for that to come back. I received the recent endorsement of the electrical workers, 134.
And I think there's just one more question, or Natalie, is there another question as well?
Yeah, there's one more question. I think it's about the PAC and whether or not Judge Lopez will be willing to contribute to our PAC if she is in fact endorsed by our
Yes, Judge, this is very similar to the question that the Democratic Party asked when they're over at the Electricians Union Hall, except the amount has fewer zeros, that's for sure. And that is, if you're endorsed by the coalition, would you be willing to pay the $250 fee that we use to cover expenses for promoting our endorsements?
I'm very happy to have been invited to be part of this interview process, and I really look forward to your endorsement. More importantly, getting out the word for the vote for myself and for my slate mates. So absolutely, I'd be more than happy to contribute.
Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us, and we wish you the best of luck in this race.
Thank you very much. It's so good to see all of you. Have a wonderful evening.
Enjoy your evening, be safe, Judge Lopez.
Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
All right, moving right along, our next candidate is Deirdre Bauman. And so let Ms. Bauman in. Attorney Deirdre Bauman is running in the
See the Lynch vacancy?
yes, the Lynch vacant. Is it Dan Lynch? Which Lynch was that? Was it
Then
Dan?
I don't know, but I know it's the
Yeah,
Lynch.
Daniel Lynch.
Yeah,
Oh,
Dan Lynch.
There you
Okay.
go.
How are you, Deirdre? Good to see you.
Likewise. How are you guys?
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining. You know, we thought this year we would do it via Zoom because it seems that almost all the attorneys and judges know how to use this format. So it's sort of like second nature, hopefully. So, you know, we are not doing this in person, although we'd like to see you in person. We'd like all of us to be together, but this is the way we're doing it, especially with some of these numbers going up again. So we want to begin by just asking you a very basic question in the beginning, and that has to do with your background. And if you could share with us where you went to college, where you went to law school, but most importantly, why you're running for judge. And I think you run for judge again, and so that's our first series of quick questions.
Yes, I'm the eldest of 4 girls. I grew up in Rogers Park on the north side of the city. Went to Chicago Public Schools for my entire academic career. I attended Lane Tech High School, and then the University of Illinois. I received my degree in political science, minor in business and German from the University of Illinois, and I stayed for law school there as well. So I attended public institutions. I began practicing law in 1992. I'm going on 30 years of practice. I am a litigator. Primarily, I do civil work, both state and federal, both trial and appellate work. I've done over 50 jury trials. I've done over 50 appellate briefs. I've argued before almost every courthouse before most types of judges at one point or another in my career. I've written several articles, very active in the Bar Association, past president, Decalogue, on the board with Ladback, on the Decalogue Foundation, very active with, I was very active with the CBA Restorative Justice Program, and I'm on the ISBA Assembly, former chair of the of SOGI, Sexual Orientation, Gender Identity Committee, current chair of the General Practice Committee. So I have invested myself in the law. I always, from a young age, knew I wanted to go into the law. I looked at it as something just marvelous. You could help people and make a difference, and that's what I've always wanted to do as a lawyer. I have to a great, more or less degree. I've done well. I've had my own practice for most of the last 20 or so years. I did have a partner who passed about 12 years ago. And I want to continue helping people. And I feel I'm at a point in my career, and I've tried, of course, as you alluded to, I've run before for judge, knowing that it is a process that people go through. And I am confident at this point that I'm ready to be a judge and sit on the bench and give benefit to the community.
Thank you. I didn't mean to cut you off. It's just we're trying to stay on track here with our time. Can you detail for us your litigation experience, including how many trials you've done, where you've received your litigation experience, whether it's state or federal court, and also, yes, I know you mentioned 50 juries and 50 appellate briefs. So I think you've already mentioned that. Did you mention whether it was in federal court or state court?
Actually, both. I've had some substantial cases in federal court. I received over $1 million verdict award in a discrimination case in federal court. I still have quite a number of cases pending in federal court, and I litigate them, from start to finish. And yeah, so the 50 includes both state and federal work. Also includes some trials I did early on when I was with the public defender's office.
How many total years have you been an attorney?
29. It'll be 30 in November.
I'm gonna defer now to Attorney House as well as Alderman Carruthers for additional questions.
Thank you.
And I will defer to Alderman Carruthers.
Thank you.
He's been asking the last question for the last.
Thank you, thank you, Natalie. Good to see you again, Deidre, and thanks for taking your time out of your busy schedule. Not only are you running for office, but you're also a working attorney. So I would imagine that combination creates a lot of stress and keeps you very, very busy.
It does.
But as you know, we've seen several candidates, and we ask many of them the same questions, and depending on the answers, we might deviate and ask them something a little bit different. But do you belong to any political or civic organizations at all? Have you been involved in any of them?
Well, I think the most, I'm the first lawyer in my family. I have no political connections to anyone, I will say that. But I have been a member of IVI, IPO for some years. I've been a member of Operation Push for some years. I've been a member of NAACP Southside chapter for a number of years. And I do what I can. With IVI, I've chaired the Gay and Lesbian Caucus. I've done programs for the women's group for IVI, and things of that nature. In terms of community activity, I am on the board of the Lane Tech Alumni Association. We do grants, we raise money for kids. And as I said, that's my alma mater. I am also president of the Cook County 4-H Foundation, and we give scholarships, raise money and give scholarships to kids who need that, or who have been participants in the 4-H program.
Okay, and do you have any political endorsements that you're able to disclose? IPO, I am very happy to announce it is endorsing me. Alderman Burnett has indicated that he is endorsing me in the 27th ward. I believe that includes our Secretary of State. I know Representative Omar Williams is endorsing me, and I believe Alderman Irvin as well. Michelle Harris has also indicated she would. Okay, great. I don't know if we have any additional questions that we didn't cover, Bob, or are we down, Natalie, or are we down to the last question?
I think there were 2 additional questions, but we are down to just due to time. I think we need to catch up. I would just ask Attorney Bauman if she's endorsed by the coalition, we'd be willing to pay the $250 fee to cover the cost of promoting your campaign and the endorsement.
Of course.
Okay. All right. I don't know if Attorney Cahotra or Alderman Carruthers, if we have time to do the other two questions, I think we are a little bit behind schedule at this time.
We're about 9 minutes behind. We're actually 19 minutes behind because Alderman Taliaferro was scheduled for 7:50. So I think we need to keep this moving along. But
I agree. I think we need to move along, and we will so we can catch up.
And I would say to Attorney Bauman, certainly is no slight that we don't ask you these questions because I know that you appeared before the coalition as well, and I believe you got substantial support. So it's not like you're really new to the process, and it's really not new to us, you know. And your presentation actually did cover quite a bit, and so I'm grateful that you were able to join us.
Thank you so much. It's nice seeing you all. And of course, if you have any further questions, you know how to find me.
Yeah.
Thank
good
you.
luck to you. Thank you. All right, our next candidate, let me let them in. It's Alderman Taliaferro.
Hello, Alderman.
Hello, can you hear me?
We hear you.
Okay. Good evening.
Okay.
Alderman Taliaferro.
Good evening.
Taliaferro.
Good evening. How's everyone doing?
Good. Welcome to the West Side Coalition PAC. I know that you are a member of our PAC, so you know pretty much everyone here. Myself, Natalie House, Attorney Natalie House, and Bob Ultra, and of course, former Alderman Carruthers. We are asking a series of questions to all of the candidates. All of the questions that we ask are the same. We ask the same questions to each candidate. We do have two questions that we do have pending from our audience members, but we are trying to stay on schedule. So we are, if we have time, we will get to the last two questions that we have. But if you can, please begin by telling us about yourself, including what college and universities that you went to, and just tell us generally why you're running for judge.
Okay. But first, let me say good evening to everyone, and I want to thank each of you for giving me an opportunity to present myself before you, seeking your endorsement and for my candidacy as judge. So thank you so much. Again, I'm Chris Taliaferro, and I have served nearly 40 years now in the public sector, beginning when I was 17 years old, serving in the Virginia Army National Guards, and then moving on to the United States Marine Corps, which brought me to the great city of Chicago, actually. And after my service in the military, I joined the Cook County Sheriff's Department as a court services deputy. And then I joined the Chicago Police Department, to which I retired after 23 years of service. I am now an alderman in the city of Chicago, serving the 29th Ward. And I believe it was in 2000, in the year 2000, I attended Lewis University in Romeoville and the John Marshall Law School shortly after that, which has now become the University of Illinois Chicago School of Law. I've decided to run for judge because, I would say in my nearly 40 years of public service, I've had an opportunity to engage in residents and cities on almost every level. Those from more affluent communities, those from communities that are in need. And I think one of the things it's allowed me to do is to be able to understand the needs of our residents and to have compassion for those needs and my assistance of them. I've always believed in the basic principle of law, and that has served me well because it's allowed me to gain what I believe a passion and love for the rule of law. I've had an opportunity to engage on it in every aspect. As a police officer, I've enforced it. As an alderman, I've had an opportunity to initiate, appeal, and rescind it. And as an attorney, I've had an opportunity to engage and analyze it and apply it to many cases that have come before me. And as a judge, I believe it serves as a pinnacle of my entire 40-year career that would allow me to analyze and comprehend and engage as a judge. So I really look at serving as a judge, as a public service, but also an opportunity to reach that pinnacle of my 40 years of public service.
Okay, very good. Can you just tell us a little bit a little bit more detail about your litigation, about your legal experience, excuse me, and your practice, your legal practice?
After graduating from law school, I sought a mentor that could, because I had never been before the courtroom, before the court, and I sought a mentor in which I engaged for a very short period in immigration law, and I still practice some immigration law to this day. But primarily, I focus on family law and family law practitioner. I began a small firm, as small as they get. I was a solo practitioner for a short period, but became a little overwhelmed with my caseload. So I brought on two partners, and we formed Nexus Legal Group. And these were two individuals that I had matriculated through law school with. We formed Nexus Legal Group, which focused on domestic relation issues, those being divorce, child custody at the time, and child support matters. And we held one or two adoption cases. But after that, once becoming elected in 2015, we decided to wind down the company. And I again began solo practitioner, but still focusing and specializing in the area divorce and family law issues.
Excellent, very good. If you can just detail for us about your litigation experience, the coalition wants to know about if you have any bench trials, jury trial experience. If you have that litigation experience, where did you get that experience? Was it in state court or a federal court or both?
All of my practice has been in the state court. I would say all of it, but I did have one matter before the U.S. Bankruptcy Court quite a while back. It was enough to tell me to get out of bankruptcy. But I would say that, so all of my practice have been on a state level, to whereby I do have limited or little trial experience. But the practice of litigation, I believe, includes, everything from client intake to trial. And with my practice, I have done, trial prep, the defense and preparation of pleadings, hearings, working through case management, discovery process, in negotiating my clients' issues. The domestic relation by Illinois statute does not have jury trials. However, there are bench trials, but I would say when I began practicing in the domestic relations division, 95% of the cases were settled, and that's through client negotiations or attorney negotiations or in pretrial. Now that numbers has even gone up a little bit more to about 97%. So I do have limited trial experience having a bench trial in the state of Indiana on the Prague Vice case, having a bench trial in the civil division, and only about 2 to 3 bench trials in the domestic relation division.
Thank you very much. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to the former Alderman Ida Carruthers, and he will ask you a few more questions.
Okay, thank you, Ms. House.
Thanks again for joining, Alderman. You represent a great ward. I happen to live in your ward, so I have to say that. And I want to continue to get my garbage picked up on a regular basis. So,
all right.
Alderman, one of the questions that we've been asking everyone is, have you been evaluated by the Bar Association? If so, how would you rate it? And then from every reviewing Bar Association.
I have submitted my ratings, or I should say, I presented myself before the Judicial Evaluation Committee that's comprised of the Alliance of Bar Associations as well as the CBA. I have not received the results of that submission as of yet, but I because of the time frame and the close proximity to the primaries, I do expect to see them very soon.
Okay. Another question, Alderman. Do you have any political? Well, before I said, let me ask you this question: has your campaign received any political endorsements?
Yes, we have. I've received endorsements from our county board president, from Mayor Lightfoot, the mayor of the city of Chicago. I've received support from Mayor Peterson of Franklin Park, Mayor Skip Salviano of Elmwood Park, and I've received support also from Mayor of Oak Park, Mayor Vicky Skaman. The following committeemen, I believe, have supported and endorsed me as well. Senate President Harmon of Oak Park, Mayor Peterson of Franklin Park, Committeeman Mayor Peterson of Franklin Park, Committeeman Joe Cook of the 41st Ward, Committeeman and Alderman Gilbert Villegas, Committeeman and Senator Rob Martwick, Committeeman Frank Avino of Norwood Park, and I apologize, Rob Martwick, Senator Martwick is of the 38th Ward, Committeeman and Alderman Felix Cardona, Ariel Reborius, Committeeman and Alderman of the 30th Ward, Alderman Nicholas Spazzato of the 38th Ward, Alderman Anthony Napolitano of the 41st Ward, Committeeman and Alderman Jim Gardner of the 41st Ward, and Committeeman and Alderman Emma Mitz of the 37th Ward. I also have the endorsement of the CFL, Local 2 Firefighters Union, Local 399, which is the Operating Engineers Union, Illinois Veterans for Change, and the 41st Ward Democratic Organization. There's probably a few others that have escaped me right now,
Oh man, that's an impressive list. That's an impressive list. I don't know if you left anybody out, but that's very impressive list of folks who are supporting you. I'll give it back to you, Bob or Melanie.
Chris, as you know, Alderman, you live closer to me than you live to Carruthers, but we're both. Let me begin by asking you a couple of questions from our audience that we'd like to pose. One is, do you believe that judges who are landlords and own multiple unit properties, that it would be fair for them to sit in forcible detainer court? Landlord as judge.
As a plaintiff?
No, as a judge, is it okay for landowners or multiple dwelling property owners to sit as judges in landlord tenant cases?
I do believe it would be fair for them to do that, and in explaining that, we're going to have judges from all walks of life. We have judges that are married, but that this should not exclude them from handling divorce cases. We have judges that, even from a criminal perspective, will have family members that commit crimes or judges that get tickets, but that shouldn't exclude them from presiding over. Judges are bound and should be bound by having independence from the political process, and even having any influence even from the judicial process. They should be able to recuse themselves if there's a conflict of interest, which they are required to do so. So just because a judge may own a unit building should not exclude him from presiding over those type of matters, barring he's not a party or witness to the proceeding.
Thank you, Alderman. And one other question, and this is also from our audience. What will you do differently to ensure that African Americans and other minorities that become justice involved are fairly treated and sentenced?
I'm sorry, Bob, could you say that again?
Yes, Alderman. What will you do differently to ensure that African Americans and other minorities that become justice involved are fairly treated and sentenced?
I think that's, one of the things that I may have spoken about a little earlier, where I believe my experience, and not just my legal experience, but my personal experience coming to what I believe is something that's much needed on the bench. We have to have the development of judges that are compassionate toward certain situations and understand. And I said that a little earlier, that my 40 years of public service has allowed me to serve all types of people through all walks of life and in many different situations. that they come in. And so we have to develop an understanding of those people that we are serving and those people that present themselves before the court for whatever reason, and develop a compassion as well within the bounds of legal precedent and within the bounds of law. And I think, because the majority of our residents from a criminal perspective appear before the bench, whether they be minority Black, minority Latino, we need judges that understand that and to be able to effectively adjudicate those matters with a sense of firmness, but compassion as well.
Thank you, Alderman. And then the final question, if you're endorsed by the coalition, will you be willing to pay the $250 fee to cover all costs incurred by the coalition to promote the endorsement?
I would be, yes.
Thank you so much for joining us, Alderman. I really appreciate your time, and good luck to you.
Thank you so much, and thank each one of you again for allowing me to present myself before you this evening.
All right.
Thank you. Take care,
All right,
everyone.
Alderman, take care.
Our next candidate is Owens Joe Shelby, who is running in the 7th Sub-Circuit. And I believe
Yeah, they went out of line. It's two.
he's about to take his,
Michael Williams.
there we go.
Well,
There's Mr.
this,
Shelby.
well, I'm not counting Joe.
All right, Natalie, you want to take it away?
Certainly. Good evening, Attorney Shelby. Thank you so much for joining the West Side Coalition PAC this evening. We do appreciate you participating in our judicial forum this evening. We are running very behind this evening, and so we are trying to speed things along a little bit. And so, but we do want to hear from you, and we do want to hear about your background. So if you can, please tell us about what college and law school that you went to, and also tell us why you are running for judge.
Little about me, I'm right here from the west side of Chicago, born and raised, St. Andrew Grade School, Providence St. Mel High School, Morehouse College, and then Chicago Kent College of Law. I'm running for judge. Well, I went to law school. After law school, I decided to become a Cook County State's Attorney because I want to, fight for the rights of victims and be a voice for victims of crime. From my experience as a prosecutor, I learned the criminal system, and I learned the kind of impact that judges can have on the community and also in the courtroom. And I've seen this, like it didn't take, a lot of people, decide later in life to become a judge. But for me, I kind of saw that earlier. This is the next step that I wanted for myself. So it's been a goal of mine for a while now. I feel like becoming a judge put me in the best position where I'm happy and where I can give the most back to my community as a judge.
Very good. You told us that you work for the Cook County State's Attorney's Office, but if you can, please detail for us all of your legal experience that you have, how long you've been practicing law, and what type of law have you practiced?
Sure. I've been with the Cook County State's Attorney's Office now for 14 years. I've been an attorney for 15 years. Before some of my experiences before the State's Attorney's Office, I worked for Speaker Madigan. I was assistant counsel to the Speaker. I did that for one session. I worked in the Criminal Law Committee, Financial Institutions, and Housing and Urban Development. I also worked before joining the State's Attorney's Office with Lovey and Law, so Lovey and Lovey. I worked on a class action lawsuit. I was part of the lawsuit. I helped out in the lawsuit where they sued the Cook County Jail for the process that inmates had to go through when they were once you were arrested, and just that whole intake process. I was one of the lawyers that helped out with that process. And then I've done real estate. I've done real estate for the last 10 years. I've done both residential buying and selling of homes. I've also had a couple of commercial deals as well. I've done that for the last 10 years. I've been with the State's Attorney's Office now for it's 14 years now. I've been through several divisions. I've been in child support, domestic violence. I did their felony review unit. I was also a TAC attorney, which is a specialized domestic violence attorney, which I handled the repeat abusers. I worked in their preliminary hearing unit. And also now I'm in the felony trial division, the second chair in that unit. I've been in that division for now, almost five years. So I've tried everything from a child support case to a first degree murder case. I've been found qualified by all of the bar associations.
So you sounds like that you've gotten most of your litigation experience in the criminal area. Can you please just detail for the coalition? They want to know like how many jury trials have you done? How many bench trials have you done? Where have you gotten that experience? Has that been primarily in state court or in federal court or both?
Yes, all of my experience right now, it is in the state courts. As far as bench trials, I want to say I've done easily over 100, probably over 150 bench trials, starting dating back from my misdemeanor time as well. My jury experience, I have roughly, I believe it's 8 or 9 felony juries that I've done. I have about maybe about 15 or so felony bench trials. But yes, all of my experience right now has been in the state courts in the criminal, and I've done numerous hearings, whether it's preliminary hearings or motion to suppress. I've probably done over 150 of those hearings also in my 14 years as Cook County State's Attorney.
Right. Thank you very much. You did answer our next question, which is whether or not you've been evaluated by the bar associations. I believe you said you've been evaluated by all of them, and then you've been found either recommended or qualified by all the reviewing bar associations. Is that correct?
That's correct. I went before them in 2020, so I believe my ratings are good for 4 years.
Okay, very good. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Attorney Bob Coulter now. He's got a couple of questions that he's going to ask you from the audience. Thank you, Attorney Shelby.
One of the questions that we have from our audience is whether you think it's unethical or unfair for a property owning judge who owns multiple unit buildings to sit as a judge in housing court and hear forceful detainer actions.
I can see, honestly, I can see how one would say that is biased. So, I mean, just to be fair, when litigants come before that judge, I can see how, I think one should be able to separate, one should be able to separate the two. But at the same time, if you own so many properties, I can't see how litigants may say that, that judge is biased because he deals with tenants and he has his own set of issues and could come with his own set of bias against tenants and their issues. So I can't see why one would say that could be biased. But again, I do think that, a judge personally should be able to separate, but I would see why they wouldn't want to put a judge there that, is involved in the day-to-day actions with tenants.
Second question is, what will you do differently to ensure that African Americans and other minorities that become justice involved are fairly treated and sentenced if found guilty by the courts?
Well, I think, from my experience, I think it plays a big role in just, I would hope to get in the criminal courtrooms, but from my experience, I think it's important to have judges that come from the community, judges that can better understand, especially in the criminal courtroom. A lot of people that come before the criminal courtroom are African American, and I think it's just important to have people that come from the community. I think me, for instance, I not only come from this community, I also have devoted my legal career to working in criminal law, being in this community. So I think that I do take an extra set of eyes when I look at cases, and I try to make sure I do what's right. One example I can give you just something that even though I've done a lot of murder, I did murder trials, I've done jury trials, but some of the things I take pride in are, it's different from that. For instance, I'll be quick, but I had a case last year where it was a simple case. A young lady got pulled over. She was in the car. There was a guy next to her. Police pulled her for a traffic violation, asked her to get out of the car. She got out of the car. It was something wrong with her headlight. Police asked for her driver's license. She went in the car. She reached in the back seat, opened her purse, and there was a gun in her purse. She was only 18 years old. And she said that, hey, I didn't have this gun. I never had a gun. The guy I picked up, we went on a date. I saw him reach back or whatever, and, it's not my gun. And the police asked the guy. He said he didn't know what. He didn't do anything. And long story short, she got arrested. The case, it went through her office and it reached my desk. Well, I just happened to look at her and look at her background. She had no background. And I said, let me look at the background of the young man she was with. And I ran his background. He was on parole, for having a gun. He had 4 gun convictions in his background. And, I took it to my boss, and even though we couldn't say it was his gun, but it was reason to believe that this young lady wasn't lying. The case had made it all the way through our office, and now it could have been an easy slam dunk case. She got caught with a gun in her purse when she opened it up. I went to my boss, and the boss was like, okay, you know what, you're right. You can dismiss it. So I think just my experience, I think I will take extra steps to look at cases and not just pass them along, because sometimes I think cases do deserve that extra right over the extra time.
And one final question, and that is, if you're endorsed by the coalition, I'm sorry, Alderman, did you want to ask this question?
Well, there's one other question I would like to ask is, how are you, Counselor? Good to see you. So glad you were able to join us. One other question I do have, has your campaign received any political endorsements?
Yes, I have. I have been endorsed by Alderman Jason Irvin, Michael Scott, Chris Talifero, Walter Burnett, Keisha Collins, Brandon Johnson in the midst, Ricky Hennon, Art Turner Jr., Art Turner Sr., and also Danny Davis and Jesse White.
Yeah, that's substantial. Okay. And I think that maybe the final question, and Bob was alluding to, is that if you are endorsed by the coalition, would you be willing to pay a $250 fee to cover the costs that are incurred to promote your endorsement?
Yes, that's no problem.
That's all I have.
All right, well, thank you so much for joining us, and we wish you the best of luck, Owen Shelby.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
All right, thank you. Okay.
All right, and so then we have Judge Tracy Porter, who is our next to last, and I'm going to admit her.
Good evening.
Good evening, Your Honor.
Hello,
How is
Judge
everyone?
Porter.
Hello.
Good. How are you?
Good, good. Trying to stay cool.
Yeah, I went from 50 to 90 degrees in 10 seconds.
Mm-hmm. So, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Okay, I was going to say, Your Honor, we apologize that we're running behind. We've done this. We've done this several times, and every time we call ourselves really trying to tighten it up and make it tighter. And it's the first time we've actually done it through an electronic function, using Zoom and all of that. But we're still a little behind, so apologize for having you in the waiting room for so long. But I'm pleased to be here with my colleagues, Attorney Bob Hotra and also Attorney Natalie House, as we go through this process to do judicial interviews regarding support from the West Side Coalition PAC, organization on the west side of Chicago, comprised of many stakeholders on the west side. A number of elected officials are also part of this group. And we do this for the last, maybe 4 or 5 years we've been doing this. So we're very pleased to have you. I'm going to start quickly, and then my colleague probably will take over from there. But initially, could you just maybe tell us something about yourself by telling us what schools you attended, college, law school, and why you are running for judge?
I grew up on the south side in the Inglewood community, product of the public school systems, then William A. Hinton, went to Whitney Young High School, and then after leaving high school, got a scholarship to Cornell College in Mount Vernon, Iowa, and then subsequently a scholarship to Drake Law School in Des Moines, Iowa. Was never really an Iowan, so brought everything that I learned back home to the city and worked in the federal government at the start of my career.
Okay. And what's your motivation for running for judge?
As a sitting judge now, one of the things, and I'll just be honest with you, I can't say as a kid I always dreamed about becoming a judge. That's not the case. I just found that when you work hard and when opportunities meet people who are prepared for a position, that there is value there. And I saw being a judge as another way for me to give back, as I had done in other organizations and really for the career of my life. I'm very philanthropic minded. Not only serving on boards, but also giving of my time and my treasures to those organizations. And something I haven't said to anyone, but when I turned 50, one of the things I purposed to do was to give back as much as I can to the community. And I find that with the skill sets I have, being a judge is a great way to do that. People need to see someone who not only looks like them, but also who understands them. I'm very culturally aware, having taught a diverse group of students of all ages, all cultures, all races. I've traveled nationally and internationally. I'll give you an example. When I was in court this morning and I said something, I realized there were Asian couples. So I just rephrased it. And once I rephrased it properly, they understood. So I believe that level of sensitivity to the litigants before you is really important. And I'd like to continue the good work I've started as a sitting judge.
Okay. So, and the second question that I want to have is, could you please tell us about your legal experience? You know, where have you worked? What type of law have you practiced? And how many years have you practiced?
So my legal career is broken up to being a lawyer, a law professor, and now a judge. I started out as a lawyer with the U.S. Department of Labor, federal government, doing federal litigation for the Department of Labor, then moved to a couple of law firms. One large law firm, Barnes and Thornburg, which was based in Indianapolis, one if not the then largest firm in Indianapolis, in the Chicago office, doing mostly real estate, healthcare law, and some support for litigation. I end up going off to some other smaller firms for opportunities, again, working on bigger projects throughout the city in real estate and business, and ended up at my own private practice, which I enjoyed. It also gave me the flexibility at that time because my mom was very sick. So working for myself enabled me to be a caregiver to her. And then after that, the opportunity came to teach part-time as an adjunct at Chicago Kent, and then at what was then John Marshall, now UCI Law School. And the ball started rolling after the financial collapse of 2007-08, and I got a visiting position at Chicago Kent, which lasted for 4 years. And then I went on to other visiting assistant professorships before I finally became a tenured professor at a school out on the West Coast. Then coming back here, again, for various reasons related to family and other things, and got here, worked for myself again, and then got the call for the Supreme Court after I was vetted through the associate judge process, and now I'm a sitting judge almost 6 months to the day.
Okay. All right, very good. I'll turn it over to my colleagues, Bob or Nellie.
Judge, we have a couple of questions from the audience that I would like to pose to you. The first one is whether or not, excuse me, let me just get it exactly. Do you feel that sitting judges who are landlords can give a just ruling in forceful detainer cases?
I do believe so. So the answer would be yes. Any judge who is sitting is obligated to be impartial in their ruling. They're to be fair and they're to be just. And when they can't, they need to recuse themselves. So I find that I don't bring my personal life into the courtroom. I apply the law as I see it and as it should be applied equally, equitably to all litigants. And so I believe a judge can. And to the extent they can't, the judicial canons of ethics give them a way to not show bias by recusing themselves.
Thank you. The second question, Judge, is what will you do differently to ensure that African Americans and other minorities that become justice involved are fairly treated and sentenced if found guilty?
Well, the one thing I'd say to everyone, regardless of age, race, nationality, is the law has to be applied as it exists. Judges are not legislatures or legislators. And so I apply the law fairly, and the best that I can do is to apply it fairly, regardless of race, religion, creed, color, any of those things. I think that's important. I think part of litigants knowing Black, brown, or otherwise is they have to be aware of what the law says and how it's applied. And I'll give you an example. Drunk driving, I sit in traffic division in the Daly Center, and the law says that statute is enforced by the element of control. So whether you're driving or parked or otherwise, it's still a DUI, and people don't know that. And
No
part of
sleeping off the fence.
say what?
There's no sleeping it off the fence.
No, there's no sleeping it off the fence, and people don't know that. And so when I talk to litigants when I talk to people in the community I'm around, I just let them know that, and they don't understand the law. And so I think part of the responsibility is to beyond my job, a little bit beyond my job, but is an obligation too, to make people understand the law. But I got to apply it fairly to everyone, regardless of color.
Natalie, did you want to finish up, or?
Yes, I will finish up with Judge Porter. Thank you very much, Attorney Holtra, for those questions from the audience. Judge Porter, has your campaign received any political endorsements? And if it has received any political endorsements, would you please tell them who they are, and please include any labor any labor organizations, union organizations that have endorsed your campaign?
I have been endorsed by the Cook County Democratic Party and various committeemen within that party. I've also been endorsed by Senator Hastings. He's a committee person as well. Representative Will Davis is also a fan, and also talked early on and gained support of, our representative Danny Davis. So I'm very proud of those endorsements. I did not get any labor union endorsements. My opponent, who happens to have connections in that way, got the CFL endorsement. So no, I don't have any labor union endorsements at this time.
Okay. Congressman Davis is a member of our coalition. He is de facto leader of our organization, so that's a pretty heavy endorsement that you have there. If you are endorsed, this is our last question that we've been asking all of the candidates, if you are endorsed by the coalition, would you be willing to pay the $250 that go towards the cost of promoting your endorsement throughout our progression of the channel?
I would. I think that's a fair and reasonable amount for the level of support that the coalition would provide, especially getting the word out about well-qualified candidates.
Okay. Well, very good. Thank you so much, Judge Porter, for your patience this evening and for participating in our forum. We really do appreciate it. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you as well.
All right.
Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, and finally tonight, our last candidate is Michael Weaver. So here we go. And there's Michael Weaver. Hi. Hello, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me tonight.
Oh, it's our pleasure. I'm just, I'm looking at our spreadsheet to see which race this is. Here we go. It's also the Lynch race. We heard earlier from Deirdre Bauman, and now we're going to hear from Michael Weaver. So welcome to the Westside Coalition's Judicial Forum. Everyone's thanking us for it and all the work we're doing. We're actually doing it tomorrow too. So it's 2 days of fun. And let us begin. Carruthers, would you like to start?
Thank you, Bob, Attorney Weaver. So glad to have you with us. I'll start off by apologizing that we are a little behind our schedule. One thing you have to understand: everybody we're talking to is a lawyer.
Oh, I'm impressed. I'm impressed. It's 8:48 only. I packed a dinner and a lunch and
And also you need to remember 2 of our panelists are lawyers too. It really gets good.
Taking shots, Bob.
It really gets good.
It's entering today, so
He wouldn't do this if he were in person, though. I promise.
Thanks for joining. So
Thanks for having me.
Real quickly, Counselor, can you please just tell us about yourself, telling us what schools you attended, college, law school, and really why you're running for judge?
Sure. And I recognize the time, so I'll try to be a little bit brief for you guys because I know it's been a long day. But so I'm actually originally from Vermont. My parents were innkeepers. So we lived in a town of about 300 people. And in junior high, we moved to outside Philadelphia. And I wound up going to school undergrad at George Washington University in DC. And then I thought I was going to work for the State Department, do all that other stuff. I had what I call my quarter life crisis, I joke, and actually got into higher education and worked in higher education for 6 years, got a master's degree in higher education administration and human resource development, and was on my way working basically in residential life at George Washington. I decided I wanted to do something different and not from a family of lawyers. I thought it was a good idea to go to law school. No one tried to talk me out of it. And so I wound up coming to Chicago for law school and went to Loyola University Chicago for law school and did well there. I was on the law review, and then I was also a Core Boy Fellow, which is a trial advocacy program, pretty intense one at Loyola. So then I clerked for a year right after law school at the High Court of American Samoa, which is a U.S. territory in the middle of the South Pacific. It's actually closer to New Zealand than it is to Hawaii. And so I did that for a year. It was a trial and an appellate court. So I worked for 2 justices and clerked for them both on a trial and appellate level, and loved that experience on a number of different levels, not alone that it was in the middle of the South Pacific. That was definitely nice compared to the Chicago winters we were experiencing. So I came back to Chicago, and then I've been at my law firm, McDermott, Will & Emery, for the last 15 years, excuse me, as an associate and partner doing commercial litigation, basically. But the last 2.5 years, I've served as our pro bono litigation partner, which means I coordinate all of our pro bono litigation efforts across the country. And it ranges from sort of high impact litigation to asylum cases to some family law cases, things like that. So the full range of things. And that dovetails into, Mr. Carruthers, your sort of original question of why do I want to be a judge? And so I've dedicated my career to pro bono and free legal services. As a young associate, I started 2 legal clinics, one at the Center in Halstead and another one at the Howard Brown Broadway Youth Center. Sorry, to help my community, my LGBT community, to get legal services. And so it's always stuck with me. And I've seen when plaintiffs and defendants are in court and they're underrepresented or not represented, and how the justice system can really steamroll them. And so for me, that was a calling as sort of the next step for me in service to the community. And as a gay man, I know firsthand when the law is against you and doesn't recognize you and recognize your relationships. And so for me, it was powerful too, as to represent. So those are the main reasons why I'm happy to explore any of what I just talked about. But again, I know you guys have been doing this for a while. So.
Right. Well, I do have a follow-up, just so I'm clear. So how many years have you been practicing?
I graduated in 06. So I guess I'm 16 years out.
Okay. All right, very good. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Natalie, are you with us?
Did you want? Yes, I'm with you. I'm with you.
Okay.
I didn't know you want me to go with the talk about his litigation experience in a little bit more detail about how many trials that you've done, Attorney Weaver.
Sure, no, not yet. So I've been involved in either chaired or been involved in about 12 to 15 trials in my career. And at McDermott, most of the trials can last for 4 to 6 weeks. I did sort of the major commercial litigation type work. So I was averaging about a trial a year. With COVID, that shut things down.
Right.
So that dropped. And then in terms of other litigation, I've had a number of sort of summary judgments, motions to dismiss, all that in general practice. And then I've handled about a dozen or so appeals. One of the things I did since trials disappeared in the last 2 years, it was the same time the Illinois Supreme Court rolled out their pro bono criminal appeals program. And so I took about 5 of those appeals and argued in front of the Illinois Appellate Court on behalf of criminal defendants. And I'm not a criminal lawyer, but it was a great experience for me and I think for my clients, because I heard from all of them that this was sort of what they felt the first time that they were being heard and that they were going through the process. And so obviously overturning a jury verdict is not easy. I'm 1 out of 4 and waiting for another decision. So I think it's a decent record for.
It is very good. That's very good. You're absolutely correct. It is very hard to overturn a jury verdict on appeal, and that is a very, very just very, very good work to do an appeal pro bono. And so, is most of your litigation experience is that in state court, federal court, or is that in both?
It's all over. So I've both in Illinois and I was at McDermott. I was on a national counsel for a client, and so I covered the 13 Midwest states. So whenever we had a trial in the Midwest, I was involved in that. So I had trials in Minnesota, Indiana. We got close. Ohio actually got to argue before the Ohio Supreme Court, which was a great experience. And then I've been in a lot of downstate Illinois courts, central Illinois, and then Cook County, obviously, and federal courts across the country as well.
So, just so I can understand better, your litigation experience is primarily in state courts, but you practice in state courts throughout the country, in Minnesota and some other states as well. Is that right?
I would say it's probably half federal, state.
Okay.
And so I've practiced, like, for example, in Minnesota federal courts, in the Ohio federal courts, but also in their state courts as well, just depending on the case.
And then you mentioned the trial experience that you've had during the portion of litigation. Is that in state court or is that in federal court?
I've done, most has been in state court. I did early on pro bono, my colleague, who was the partner at a time, we did a criminal federal trial in the Northern District of Illinois.
Okay.
About a week.
All right. And then I just have one other question for you is, have you been evaluated by the bar associations? And if you've been evaluated by the bar associations, what were the outcome of those evaluations?
Sure. I've been evaluated by all the bar associations. I've been either found qualified or recommended by the bar associations. Lagback found me highly recommended. And then the other ones found me qualified or recommended. With the asterisk that the Asian American Bar Association and the Black Women Lawyers Association did not rate me, but on the asterisk of not my fault. I think the way the process was, that's my understanding.
Okay, very good. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Attorney Bob Cahotra, and he will ask you the balance of the questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Sorry for all the delay. We've got just a couple of questions from our audience that we'd like to ask you. One is, do you feel sitting judges who are landlords can give a just ruling in forcible detainer cases?
That's a great question. I think it depends on the type of landlord. I'm actually a former landlord. My husband and I owned a couple properties that we've actually recently sold in the last couple of years. So I think they can, because it's part of their experience and what you have to do. I mean, everybody comes in with experience in the court. That's one of the reasons why you want to elect judges who have a wide range of experiences. And so I think just because you're a landlord doesn't mean you're automatically biased to a landlord. I was a tenant for a number of years as well. That's why I have some stories from that. So I think what you have to do, though, as a judge, is you have to get rid of your biases, implicit or otherwise, to make sure that you're looking at that case fairly, regardless of your specific experience.
All right, and one other question, and that is, what will you do differently to ensure that African Americans and other minorities that become justice involved are fairly treated and possibly sentenced?
Yeah. So for me, I would slow it down. And I'm going to give you an example of how I see what sort of a real life example when I talked earlier about the appellate court arguments I was making. So I represented an individual who wanted to represent himself in a criminal case on appeal. And so he wanted to represent himself at trial, and I won't use the phrase like representing yourself, you might have to control the client, but that's what he wanted to do. And the argument on appeal is, or one of the arguments on appeal is he went to his first arraignment and he kept saying, I want to go pro se, I want to demand trial, and the judge ignored it. I mean, it literally didn't respond. And so I think one of the important things that judges can do is, and it sounds basic, but slow it down, is make sure that the defendants, even if they're represented by a lawyer, but a lot of times, not so much in criminal, obviously, because they have public defenders, but especially in civil, is if they don't have a lawyer, to make sure that the defendant or the plaintiff, if they're bringing a suit, I'll use the landlord example again, but they understand their rights in the process. Obviously, a judge can't be an advocate for a side, but they can, what I say, advocate for the law and make sure that everybody's appearing before them knows what their rights are and know what the process is.
Thank you. I think we have one other question, and that is are we at the final question? I will ask it. I didn't hear you, Natalie. If you are endorsed by the coalition, will you be willing to pay $50 fee to cover the costs incurred by the coalition to promote the judicial endorsements?
I'm sure that's fine. I have to say a tentative yes, only because I have to talk to my committee, but I wouldn't. I couldn't imagine why we wouldn't. I'll put it that way. But I've learned I might be the candidate, but I don't have control over many things.
Right. I'm not sure if we asked a question about endorsement, did we?
You know, we didn't. That's what I was trying to have, but I didn't realize I was on mute. So that's
Okay. So the question is, Costa, have you been endorsed by any political organizations or any other organizations regarding your candidacy?
Yep. So I've been endorsed and slated by the Cook County Democratic Party. I've also been endorsed by the Chicago Federation of Labor and also the Southland Friends of Labor as well. They mainly do sort of the Southland, Cook County, and Will County, which obviously I'm running countywide for in Cook County. And then also I've been endorsed by the LGBT Victory Fund, which is the largest LGBT organization. It's a PAC, and they endorse candidates, not just judicial, but legislative candidates who identify as LGBT, and they try to raise the diversity of across the nation. So those are my major endorsements. I've been endorsed by various state reps and committeemen and things like that as well.
Okay. All right.
I think that's all we have.
Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for waiting in that waiting room, like wondering what's going on. When are these people gonna get going? So thank you.
No. Stop apologizing. I appreciate you guys taking the time. I mean, you are the ones who are doing the heavy lifting. So I appreciate you guys taking the time tonight to do this. I really do. So thanks for having me.
The campaign too. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great night.
all right. You too. All right. Bye-bye.
Well, viewers, there you have it. That's our first roundup of the Judicial Forum. And we'll be back tomorrow. Same streams on Facebook and YouTube Live. And we will be going through the remaining candidates. And Natalie, I don't know if you have that list in front of you. Maybe we can read off who the candidates.
I do have the list. I do have the list in front of me because I do have a proper telephone that works, not like an Android or anything. So we have Mary McMahon tomorrow. We have Thomas Moore Donnelly, Lisa Taylor, Claudia Silva Hernandez, Alderman Howard Brookins, Attorney Monica Somerville, Attorney Elizabeth Ryan, Judge Ray Mitchell, Attorney Jackie Griffin, Attorney Dan Balanoff, Attorney Yolanda Sayer, Attorney Meredith Benet Hammer, Judge Dominique Ross for the appellate court, Thomas Nowinski, Attorney Thomas Nowinski, as well as Attorney Marsha Conway O'Brien tomorrow. So we have a full slate tomorrow. So that's it for.
Thank you all for joining us, participating and learning about these candidates so you know who to cast your vote for. The coalition will present its endorsements following our May 22nd meeting, and we hope you join us tomorrow evening. Thank you for joining tonight. On behalf of Natalie House and Isaac Carruthers, we thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.